G'day folks, and welcome to the aquaponics area in our small little backyard farm. This week's clip I'm going to be just walking you through how I've been feeding the system up. Now we've had no fish in here for a while, and it will definitely come in handy for you folks out there who are between fish, whether you've harvested them all and they're all in the smoker at the moment, or maybe you've had a bit of a mishap, a cold snap's come through and killed all your fish off, and you're still looking at keeping the vegetables going until you can get some more fish in there. So I'll walk you through what I've been doing and the challenges I've been facing while we've been without fish, and give you a couple of suggestions that you can use just to keep the nutrients flowing without, tainting the water too much that it'll affect the fish once you get a new batch in there. So before we go up and have a look at the tests, I thought I'd just mention the test kit I'm using. This is the API freshwater test kit. Most aquaponics folks I know use this in the backyard setting. Commercial guys use a little bit more sophisticated pieces of equipment, but this is a good budget one for us backyarders. It's got pH, high and low range. I've taken them out of the kit. Now this one's a little bit beaten and used, as you can see. I've taken them out of the kit because I use a Blue Lab combo meter, which gives temperature, EC, which we don't really use, as well as pH. So I just find a meter a lot more accurate and faster to use. The rest of this test kit has ammonia. It's an A and B solution. Then it also has a single bottle nitrite test, and then we have a dual A and B nitrate test. So that's what you'll see in the test coming up. They're pretty much all a must, I think, to have in the backyard, especially when you're cycling a system. You need to know how much ammonia is in there, the nitrite as well, because nitrogen in these two forms can be very toxic to your fish. It is a good idea to have one of these little test kits. I suppose I'll stop yabbering on and we'll go up and have a look at the test I did earlier and see where the levels are sitting. So just up here at the fish tank, folks, and you can probably make out we're sitting at around about 10 milligrams per litre, or parts per million. That's the third colour patch down with the nitrate. That's the available nitrogen for the plants. The next one over here is the nitrite, and the nitrite is pretty much well traced, so we know the bacteria is still converting ammonia. And down here we have the ammonia itself. I'd say it's coming in at around about 0.25 to 0.5 parts per million. So I'm pretty happy with these results. It shows that the ammonia is being processed into nitrite, and then from nitrite into nitrate, and I'll cover how I've been adding ammonia to the system in a minute. Also too, ammonia isn't the only nutrient that you get from your fish. The ammonia comes from the gills primarily, and it converts all the way through to plant available nitrate. There are a whole load of nutrients in the fish feed. Not all of them are assimilated to the fish, and that's where the other nutrients in the aquaponic system come from to keep your plants healthy. It's the potassium, iron and calcium that we generally need to add in, as they're in there in very low amounts. So the other test I have just here is the iron test. And as you can see, we have a lot more iron than 1 part per million. So I know we've got enough iron in the system, but that doesn't necessarily mean the plant is taking it up, which is something I'll have a look at in a minute. I've actually done a little clip on iron and adding it to the system if you want to check it out up there. But basically, iron's uptake depends on the pH of the water in the system, and that is something that you may have to also manage if you're running without fish for a little while and topping up with town water. So we'll cover that in a little bit. Now we'll have a bit of a gander at some of the nutrients that I like to add. So as to how we can keep the plants happy, well, one of the easiest way is to just feed with fish pellets, just the normal fish food. The beauty of adding the fish food is you're going to get the elements you'd normally get after the fish consume it, plus more, because they're not metabolizing all the different elements in here. You're going to have a whack of nitrogen in there, as well as the phosphorus, magnesium and other elements. I did find a downside to adding the fish pellets, a couple actually. Number one, they're an expensive way to add nutrients to the system, and secondly, they tend to go a little bit fluffy and they create solids that you need to remove from the system. So I figured there's other ways I can put nitrogen in there and other elements without causing extra work, and also to make it a little bit cheaper. So that's just one way you could go about it, especially if you're only going to be without fish for a small amount of time. You might just want to use up the pellets that you have on hand. The way I've been feeding up the system lately is by using fish emulsion. This one here in particular is made from a pest species, European carp, that are doing a lot of damage to the Australian native waterways and fish as a result. So I've been using this. It's high in nitrogen. Not only that, it contains phosphorus, potassium. It also contains magnesium, iron, zinc, manganese, copper, boron, sulfur, molybdenum, cobalt, chromium and sodium, even though you don't want a lot of sodium through your system. But yeah, it is a fairly complete way to keep the nutrients flowing in the system. And with the fish emulsion as well, people have been using this to cycle their systems for a number of years, and to my knowledge no one has had any issues with fish deaths after using something like this. So yeah, it's something that has been, you know, tried and true by at least the Australian aquaponic community. If you're in other countries, I know America has some fish emulsion and kelp based products that people use in their system. I think it does pay to just double check with the people who manufacture it to make sure there's nothing in there that could harm your fish. Now on to another form of nitrogen you can potentially add to the system, and that is urine. This here is some of my own aged urine. I collected it for a bit of an experiment well over a year ago now, and it's been in a sealed container so the nitrogen won't gas off for well over 12 months, and I've added about, I'd say about a litre all up into the system just to help boost the nitrogen levels so I don't have to keep using the expensive fish emulsion. So, you know, if for all you people out there who are freaking out because I'm adding urine, I mean, think about your poultry manure you use in the soil patch. It's treated well, then we can use it, and then there's no issue. The same with urine. I mean, to be totally honest though, I won't be feeding any produce we grow from the system to other people because there is that ick factor, and you know, I'd prefer not to put them through the psychological trauma, even though I'm sure there would be no physical trauma. Also too, with the urine, there are other elements in there, elevated sodium, so that's why I haven't been using a lot of it. I don't want to add too much sodium to the system overall. It's an unknown quantity. I haven't done a test on it, so I'd prefer, yeah, not to add too much in. I'll stick with this for now. Other things you can add in are things like urea fertilizers. The issue is you're only adding a lot of nitrogen, you're not adding other elements in, so you have to start working with a bit of a cocktail. One thing I've seen one chap do is add a load of the powdered kelp seaweed. This particular brand is 16% potassium plus 60 other elements, and that sort of makes up for whatever's missing in the urea, or maybe even your urine if you're game enough to try that. So this is something we add to the system anyway, just to get those trace elements in there. But yeah, that's pretty much, well, the big three. You've got your fish emulsions, you've got your own urine if you're game enough, and you have the fish pellets. And if you want to add the urea, you can go down that track as well. But remember, you do need to substitute other elements in there. Now, as to quantity, well, that's something you're just going to have to work out for yourself because everyone's water volume will differ. The rate at which your bacteria are processing the ammonia that you add into the system will differ as well. Also too, some of the nitrogen in these different fertilizers, like the emulsion in particular, may not be in the form of ammonia, so there will be a little bit in there, so there'll be enough to keep your bacteria ticking over, but not a great deal, just to keep that in mind. So as I said before, pH is also something that you may want to monitor while you're running without fish in the system. Now this is some water just straight from the tap here, and just to show you, it's running. Once the pH meter settles down, I can tell you it's probably going to come up at around about 7.4 to 7.5. So that's what is coming straight out of the tap. The iron additive I'm using here is a DTPA chelated iron. So this works up to a pH range of around about 7.4. 7.5, so I'm right on the cusp of this being effectively taken up by the plants. Now I have noticed in one of the plants we have growing, the warrigal greens, it does show chlorosis between the veins very easily when it's not getting enough iron in the system. The other thing that I thought it may have been was a magnesium deficiency. So what we can do to add magnesium to the system is add about a tablespoon of Epsom salts into the, for every 1,000 litres or 250 gallons into the system, and that pretty much will looks after any magnesium deficiencies. Magnesium normally makes its way into our system when I add in some hydrated lime or calcium hydroxide, as it is present in there. But as I'm not doing that, as the pH is already high enough, that's why I've decided to add a little bit in. So they're just a couple of things. I'll just give you a look at the pH. It's actually jumped up to 7.6. So yeah, as far as nutrients go, you do have to keep in mind the availability of certain elements at certain pH ranges. Now, obviously, looking at the Warrigal greens, I have let the ball slip. So I've started to treat the top-up water again in our spare fish tank, basically adding phosphoric acid. You can check out this little clip up there that shows you how I reduce the pH in the water, top-up water, and then dosing it into the system. So I've been doing that for about a week now, and we'll pop on down and we'll just have a look at where the pH stands. So we'll just pop the pH probe in the radial flow filter here, and there we go, down in there, and you'll see it drop only a fraction really. It'll probably only come down to around about 7.2 at the lowest. That's because I've only done a couple of top-ups over the last week or so of that very low 5.3 water I think it's sitting at in the top-up tank. What I'm looking for is a range between 6.2 to about 6.8. In that sweet spot, you'll find that most elements are available to the plants on that pH range. So that's what we're pretty much all looking for. And yeah, that's basically how I'm looking after the nutrients while we don't have any fish in the system. I mean, fingers crossed, we will be renovating very soon. And as soon as that happens, I'll have some more fish in the system, looking at jade perch this time, and we'll be up and away again, and I won't really have to worry about all this palaver. Just a quick reminder, folks, we've got a couple of affiliate links for the testing gear I showed today, as well as some of those additives over on our website. There'll be a link in the description below, and also a little button here. That's for you Aussies out there. Few folks in the States, you've actually got more of a selection, because you can hop over to our Amazon influencer page where we have a load of different testing equipment, also some different additives that you might find useful, as well as other gardening bits and pieces like the veggie pods and a whole host of stuff. So check that out if you're interested. You don't have to buy through our links, but you know, every little bit counts and really does help us out. So thanks to those people who have already decided to use those links. We really appreciate it. Also need to thank those marvelous folks over on Patreon who are continuing to support our channel. There's a list of our super contributors going up the screen there, and you can also find their links down in the description below. It'd be absolutely fabulous if you could jump on some of those links and go over and suss out what they're all about. There's some websites and also some Facebook pages. So thank you very much again, once again, patrons. I will pretty much all leave it there, though. I do hope this clip has helped you folks out, and I also hope that your aquaponics and your gardens are booming, and I will catch you next clip. Cheers all, have a top one.